You're going to have obstacles in your life. Hopefully not so hard.
Yes, we can hope, right?
And, it's like the pain, and I'm sure you agree, the pain in your parents' eyes to see their own child suffering so much is... And as a parent, you can understand it now.
Welcome to the Resilience Reborn podcast. We are your hosts, Angie
and Trey Easley. Each episode, we bring you powerful stories of people who have faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger.
We'll find hope together, one story at a time. Now, let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Resilience Reborn. I'm Angie Easley. And today I have the pleasure of having Sarah Drye with us, which is actually a really cool story. We've known each other for, how many years did you say? 15 years. But this is the first time we actually have met because Sarah she was widowed at a very young age as well. And we kind of connected through a mutual friend. So we just have talked over, messaging, social media, things like that, and just watched each other's stories evolve. So I'm really, really excited to have Sarah on today. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, this is going to be really awesome. I'm excited.
I am too.
Okay, so first I just want to say, can you just go ahead and share with us and our audience how you became a widow at such a young age? And how your husband's diagnosis, he had stage 4 colon cancer, how that impacted you at that time.
Well, he was diagnosed 6 months after we met. So we were not engaged to be married or married yet. And obviously it just turned our worlds upside down. I was 24 and he was 26, I believe. So he had been ill for a little while and they hadn't quite figured out what the issue was. And then they finally did discover that it was colon cancer and it had already spread to several areas of his body, which was just really hard to believe at his age. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was a healthy person. He was a runner, the hiker. So at that point, it was a very dark place for us. And we immediately sought out the treatments and the best doctors and what we needed to do, whatever we needed to do to prolong his life. So he had to have multiple surgeries right away. And that was difficult. He was so weak already. And then the chemo treatments began, and once he got over the side effects from the chemo treatments, he was able to kind of rebound a bit. So he felt good and would have, good times in between the treatments. It was a diagnosis that was terminal, and it was not, we knew from the beginning, as much as we wanted to deny, the end result was going to be that he would die at a young age. And so it was 2009, and I'll never forget, actually, it was the year that President Obama was elected for the first time. And I remember us laying in bed watching the inauguration in January, and both of us just had tears because we were so happy with this new president and with what it meant for our country, and we had such high hopes, and it was such a special feeling to share together. And it's really one of those fond memories that I'll always cherish, because that was right before he was really going downhill quickly, because he passed on January 29th of 2009.
2009.
So I was 29 years old.
Okay. Yeah. And so in all of that, though, you ended up, after he did the surgeries and he started the treatment, you did get married to him, right?
I did.
Okay.
I did. We kind of fell quickly in love. we had both kind of lived a fun post-college life, and we just knew that despite the illness, we just wanted to be together, and I just had to be married to him.
Yeah.
And
even though you knew the outcome, it was in you, and that's what you knew you needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And looking back, I think, on one hand, like, it must have been really hard for him to allow me to do that, because I do recall him at some point saying, like, you don't need to do this. Like, what's going to happen, like, you just need to go. But it was just my heart.
Yes.
He was my heart, and I was going to be with him until the end. Mm-hmm. And so I think Angie and I were discussing earlier how after his death, his dad would say how I gave him the best couple years of his life, because had I not been there, he may not have had those years.
Right.
He may not have lived those years.
Yes, and that was the purpose. That's what we had talked about. Yeah.
And, and for me too, it changed me. And changed, obviously.
Your perspective on everything.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
My perspective on life. And it made me a better person. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. He made me a better person.
So you talked a little bit about this, but the fact that you had this diagnosis that it was terminal, how did you cope with that, with him in the immediate, after all of that?
The coping at first was very difficult, very dark. Mm-hmm. It's something I don't look back on often because it's just too hard to think about it. He was in such a dark place, and so I couldn't do anything to help him. Mm-hmm. So it obviously made it very dark for me. And I think once we were past that point of the surgeries and him getting his first few treatments, the skies kind of opened up a little bit, and we could see the sunshine again, and he was able to do the things he loved again, like be outdoors and hike and go to the mountains. So, it was a really dark couple of months, and then we had this change in the way we felt, the way he felt, and could kind of live again.
Yeah. So you did all of those things, and you were able to do a lot of things with him and do adventures, because he loved adventures.
Yeah, we did. And, looking back, like, I know our wedding, for example, was beautiful. It was amazing. It was everything I could have imagined, thanks to my parents and his parents. And got married at the church his dad was the minister at in Richmond, and had this beautiful reception at the Omni down in Richmond, downtown. It was perfect. It was just perfect. And then we went on this honeymoon that was amazing to St. Lucia.
St. Lucia, that's amazing.
It is amazing. And so I had only ever been to Bermuda.
Okay.
And he had never been to any island.
Okay.
So that was like one of our greatest adventures for sure.
Oh yeah.
That experience for both of us was just wonderful. And all the little ones in between, for sure.
Yeah. So that, I feel like, is kind of how you did cope, because you were excited that he was at a place that he could actually enjoy things, even though you knew that the end result was gonna be terminal, right?
Yes.
You coped by trying to do as many things as you could to bring him joy and make him happy and live that small little piece of life that you had together.
You're right. That was definitely a way we coped. And I would say, being with people that we loved. Andrew was very social. So he was a teacher and a coach prior to his diagnosis. And then he had to stop teaching. But he had always worked at Blue Ridge Mountain Sports, which was a local company.
Yeah.
And in the time that he was sick, once he was better, he started working his way up and became the manager of that store in Richmond. And so he had, a lot of friends that were in that store and then in several stores around. But he just would, he just loved being around all of his people.
Yeah.
And he loved Capitol Ale House.
Oh, yeah.
And he loved music. And he always wanted to be the first to introduce new music to people.
Okay.
It was like a thing.
Yeah.
So, in a way, those were all ways that we coped.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like that you had the time. Like that was, that you had that even though you knew what it was going to be. That's really...
It was. And you know what else is really special about the experience we had, as dreadful as it was? His dad's church in Martinsville was so generous to us and so generous to the family. They donated money to help pay medical bills and medical expenses. There's a lot of things. I continued to work, obviously, but there were a lot of things we wouldn't have been able to do had we not had that support.
Oh, yeah.
And so it just... The kindness of people is really, really amazing. And so now I feel like it's one of those parts of me that has changed in that my empathy level is so high for people who are going through those difficult times. And
yes, because you don't know all of the ins and outs of things like that and the types of bills and everything. So that's really good that you had that to take the load off. So he could enjoy to do things. Oh, yeah. That's
incredible. I mean, we had a family offer. I think we went 2 or 3 summers that we were able to go to a beach house in Emerald Isle for free because this very, very kind, generous family from the church owned it, and they just allowed us a week just to go stay there. And that was not something that his parents could do.
Right.
They just couldn't afford to do that every summer. So the kindness, that was something, really meant a lot to us.
Yeah, really good ways to cope. So I want to talk just a little bit about the support that you had after he passed away, how you navigated that. We're all different in our grief journey. And so maybe just, tell us about the support that you had, the things that you sought out, and then how you began to rebuild after that, how, kind of like what that journey looked like a little bit.
Yeah. So first, foremost, my family was my lifeline. Had I not had the parents and the siblings I have, I just don't know how I would have survived. So my mom and dad both were social workers at the time and very passionate about therapy. And so they were really pushing and asking when I would be ready for some therapy or some support groups. So when I was ready, one of the best support groups that I became a part of was a small young widows group my dad found. And the woman who ran the group was a young widow herself. And she ran it out of her home, and she had maybe 8 to 10 women mostly who would come to the meetings once a week, once a month maybe. And we would all just talk. And it was so comfortable and safe and such a warm place to be. I looked forward to it. I looked forward to going to the meetings. And even if, at the first meeting I just cried, it was okay.
It was okay because there's something about being in a room full of people that get it, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I'll never forget this one woman who mentioned feeling guilty because she didn't think about her late husband every day. And I thought, how do you not think of him every day?
Mm-hmm.
And now, being where I am, of course, I think...
now.
I understand.
Yes.
I still think of Andrew every day. Mm-hmm. But I could see how someone might not.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, it's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's part of how your perspective changes.
Right.
And how you realize, you can't judge how it is for one person.
And I do think that... because I didn't do anything like that to cope when I lost my husband. But I think the fact that you were able to see other women at different, times in their journey, that probably did give you a little bit of hope or, just little things to grasp onto.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah. Because some of them, it had been years.
Right.
And they were maybe dating or they were remarried or had a live-in partner,
right.
So I'm seeing all different stages. And then there are also some who were kind of newly in it, but starting to date or, selling their house and things that I would have to do eventually, but I was still it was also raw,
right?
And I was not even close to that, but knowing that, okay, you're here and you're still standing and you did it. So, okay.
And it's okay no matter when,
right,
or how,
right,
or where, right? It's, I think that I feel like society, there's a certain way that they think that we,
a timeline.
Yes. Widows or, anybody who's lost someone, should go about things. And it's just not that. So that's really awesome that was helpful in that way. I think, yeah.
That was, one of the biggest surprises to me personally was how after the first couple of months when he was gone, I just felt so lonely. Ugh. And it was so hard to be alone. And I just kept saying, I'd tell my sister, I can understand why people start to date so soon. It's really hard when you've had someone in your life. And Andrew and I were together for almost 5 years. I mean, it wasn't a very long time.
Me too. Yeah.
And so I'm thinking of these people who have been together for 20 plus years and
well, and I just a little side note here. My grandmother passed away when I was married to Kyle, and he started dating, and I was so upset. I'll never forget that he actually called me to ask if I would sing at his wedding, that he was getting married, and I was crying. I was just sobbing about it. Kyle actually had to take the phone and say, I'm really sorry, but she's probably going to have to call you back, because I was like, how can you do this? And do you know that after Kyle died and some time had passed and I started, thinking about that and moving forward in my life, and I was like, I was so awful to think that, because I got it. At that moment, I got it that and that was a marriage of how many years they had been married. I don't know how long, and how can you
But you didn't know.
No. But it is funny. Yeah. Not funny, but that now I had that perspective to know that, I mean, if we just thought that after just a few years of marriage, you can imagine the loneliness that they feel.
Absolutely.
You know? So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay, so you did the group therapy.
So I did the group therapy, which was great. I really, really enjoyed.
Well, yes, we did enjoy it because in the long run, right? Yes.
I appreciated what that did for me, but I also saw a therapist privately, because you have so much that you have to say.
Oh yeah,
and there's so much that you have to work through, and it was invaluable. My time with her was invaluable, and I probably saw her the entire first year.
Yes,
after Andrew's death.
Okay, okay. So you were in some sort of therapy that at least that first year afterwards. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I want to say I did the groups, and the individual therapy. Yeah, for a full year.
Okay. And then you said of course, your parents were like your rock, right?
I spent a lot of time. The other saving grace for me was that my older brother and his wife lived nearby. They had a son who was almost 2 at the time, and then my niece was born a month after Andrew died. And, kids just bring such joy and love and innocence. It's hard not to just feel some sort of happiness when you're around them. So I spent a lot of time with them.
Yes.
And thankfully they didn't mind it.
Yeah.
They got some free babysitting out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a really special time that I had with them.
Yeah.
It was a healing time, somewhat of a healing time for me.
And so then, kind of like walk us through after you had that first year, and you were in your therapy, and so how did you start to kind of come out of this and rebuild?
It was it's hard. I feel like your perspective changes so much, and it's hard your day to day feels very trivial. And I was a teacher at the time, and I started to just feel like not that my work didn't matter, because I always felt passionate about what I taught and making a difference in kids' lives. But the meetings and the lesson plans and all of the other stuff that just didn't have any meaning to me anymore started to really just weigh on me. And I was thinking, why are we doing this?
Yes.
Like, what is the point? So I felt like I kind of just did what I had to do.
Yeah.
And let the rest go. Because I was like, it's just not that important. And if it is really important, then I'll take care of it. So, and then I decided that I wanted to do something more with my career. So I went back to school.
Okay.
And I got my graduate degree reading. And so I became a reading specialist. And about that time, right before I finished that program, was when I met my now husband, Mike. And so, it was kind of like a transformative time in that I had this program where I was going back to school, and I felt very invigorated by it, and just really wanting to learn and grow. And in a lot of ways, I could share my story while I was in this program.
Yeah.
So it was really special. And I met some very special people in the program who I'm still, friends with. And then it, kind of led into this, oh, well, here I am now with someone else who, I've fallen in love with, and we've gotten married. And
yeah,
so that kind of was all leading up to the next phase of my life.
And so you met Mike when? When did you meet Mike? That was...
So I met Mike in 2010.
Okay.
It was about a year after Andrew had passed, a year and a half. He was a friend of one of my good friends from teaching. And she had said to me that she had a nice guy she would love to introduce me to whenever I was ready. And I was sort of hesitant and said, okay, when I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we met. We wound up meeting for a coffee date, and then had a second date and another date. And we both had some baggage from our past. So, it was kind of like, and it was actually kind of nice because we both knew about each other's past a little bit. So we didn't have the need to just share it right away and worry that the person might run away scared.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that part of it made it a little easier.
Well, and the fact too, you've been through this awful time in your life, and you know what it is like to have loved and lost. And so things just take on a different meaning. So I feel like that probably helped you with the fact that, when you said baggage, to kind of, I can get through anything, right?
Right.
But I'm sure that it was really nice to know I'm not the only one that is broken, right? Because oftentimes that's the way that I felt.
Right.
It's just that I am this broken person that who is going to take that on? I mean, we know that we're hard. We're sometimes hard too.
Yes.
We're a lot, and to love us, and takes a lot of everything, right?
It takes a special person
It really
to love us.
Yeah.
And I exactly remember the feeling of, feeling broken and like, it's no one's gonna love me,
right? And how will
like he did? And
yes, and you constantly have that comparison game that if you do meet someone, how, because I always held him on a pedestal, but somehow it just happens and it works out, and before this, we were just actually talking about how we're lucky that we actually have found someone else, to love, and to, that we had, that first really awesome love of life, and now we have a second one, which is really amazing. And it just speaks to the character of other people too, that they allow that in their life.
Absolutely. And, but it didn't come without the guilt. It did not come easily. And I think, I don't know if misconception is the right word, but like when I remember going through that and starting to date and thinking, this just feels so weird. Like, how am I supposed to do this? And feeling so guilty about having feelings for another person. But my therapist, and I'll always remember her telling me, you didn't choose this to happen. It just
Mine said the same thing.
Really?
Yes. Like, and there were, and that stems several things too, just because I had a premonition, right? And so I struggled with that a whole lot. Right. And she said he chose to go, and we did not choose that this was going to happen, that we were going to marry this person. Right. Something tragic was going to happen. So 100%. And so at some point we have to know, and all the people in the world can say they would want you to be happy. Because I don't know how many people told me that. Oh, right. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We could have a whole episode just on all the things people say, and we're like,
in a better place.
yes, and it's for a reason, right? But, you know, it kind of is, right? I mean, it kind of is true that we can move forward. Like, I don't,
Right,
you know.
right. Well, when you're in it,
Yeah.
that is not even conceivable.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not conceivable that you're going to move forward. But it is moving forward. It's not moving on.
Yes.
You don't move on from that kind of loss,
No.
trauma.
No.
It's just that you continue to live your life. And you know, so when you're in the dark place and you can only imagine your life with that person who you've lost, you're not thinking about, you know, you can't imagine a world without them.
Right.
So there's just no way
Yeah.
that you can picture yourself 15 years later with a family. And
In a totally different place. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's so many things that we could hit on with that, right?
yeah.
Okay, maybe, and you said a couple of these things, but what are maybe some lessons or things that you really just learned or that like really hit you in this journey that you've had? Whether they were soon after or even, you know, just, you know, recently, what are some things that just come to your mind?
I think, you know, as cliche as it is, that life is just so precious and, you know, really the little things are just the sweet moments, whatever they may be to each person. But also that, you know, I look back on my life in two parts as my life with Andrew as being like my previous life and then my life with Mike presently. And I think about how you still have hardships and things are still hard in life, but I have a different perspective.
Yes, you look at them differently.
And we look at things differently. Before Andrew passed away, I never had issues with anxiety. And it just wasn't a thing.
Yep.
I knew some of my family members didn't understand it, didn't know why. And then after he passed away, suddenly I'm having panic attacks.
Yes.
And wondering what is wrong with me. So, you know, things like that where I've learned, you know, it's not necessarily like a positive lesson, but it's a life lesson.
Yes.
Right? Like,
well, yeah, because it's, in all the things too that you had to navigate through. I mean, you were his caretaker, right? You were there when the diagnosis happened. You were there through the dark, dark, dark place. And then he came out of that. And then, you know, knowing that he only had a certain amount of time and you had to live everything to the fullest. And then to actually be with him and watch him as he declined again, right? That's a lot.
yeah.
And so your perspective is going to change greatly. And those things, like you mentioned earlier, were just, you know, like with work, it was trivial, right? This, why are we here doing this? I have been through much, much harder things. And why am I here doing this right now?
Yeah.
So that is a lesson. As much as it hurts,
Right.
it is
Right.
something that you took away from that.
It is. It is. Because, you know, I was really, during that time of him being sick, just pushing a lot of that down.
Yes.
You know, suppressing a lot of those feelings.
Because you didn't have time to deal with
just
that,
didn't have
right?
time to deal with that.
You had to
Yes.
take care of him
I had to take care of him and work a full-time job.
and be strong at the same time,
Yeah.
right?
So that's what I did. And then later on, you know, those things kind of crept up. And so it was kind of learning to deal with all of that as part of the grieving process as well.
Yeah.
And learning about myself and how I need to take care of myself and heal through, you know, heal through taking care of myself.
Yeah. being that you've been through this loss and now you are remarried and have 3 beautiful kids, do you find that you are somewhat like the way that you parent, or I think for me, just kind of an example is I felt very, very sheltered before I lost Kyle. I had a really, really great childhood. My family was amazing. And then when he died, I was at a loss for everything. So I find myself as a parent now wanting to make sure that my kids know what loss can look like. And I mean, clearly they have it with me. They can talk to me, right? But not being sheltered as much. I don't know. It's just something I wondered if you had a perspective on that.
I think in general, I do feel that way about them understanding that. So Mike's dad passed away 2 years ago, and they didn't go to the memorial service, but they obviously knew he was sick. They knew that he died. And so I feel like, and Jilly, my oldest, knows about Andrew. So I do feel like it's something that we've discussed. You know, I'm not sheltering them from the hard parts of life. I don't think it's in a bad way that I'm open about things being difficult.
Oh, yeah, no.
And just that I say things sometimes and they'll see me crying when I'm just having a hard day.
Yeah.
You know, and especially having a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
There are times where I just am so exhausted and flustered and I just need a break, and my 10-year-old will come in and swoop in and take him and help me out, and that to me is creating another resilient, strong human being, you know? And so...
Yeah, I think for the longest time for me, because like you said, you know, your oldest knows, but mine didn't know for a really long time about, you know, this other life that I had, right? And so I think that was another reason why I didn't heal as much, because they didn't know. So I had to, like, behind closed doors is when I could break down. And so when I felt a huge weight lifted, actually, when my oldest found out, and then telling my youngest, because I was like, if I cry because I miss Kyle, it's okay now, you know? So I do, you know, and I talked, you know, in therapy, you know, is that good for my kids? You know, is it good for them to know that I have this anxiety? Because that's hard, you know, But I think no matter what, we're always going to be that strong person. They're always going to be like, my mom is the best. My mom's the strongest. But those moments, like you said, when they can see you cry, that just shows them this is life. This is real.
Right.
And we have them navigate how to overcome and just live with it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember, you know, I mean, my mom was very open with her emotions and things that were hard, and she had...
I don't remember that.
No. She had a standing phone. So we moved from Philadelphia to Virginia in 1989. And my mom's therapist was in Philadelphia, and she had a standing phone appointment with her therapist probably once a month, and we were not to bother her.
Oh, wow.
She would go in her room and
that's
have her
have
her appointment, and that was it. And we knew what it was, and we did not bother her.
Right. And so I don't like, if my parents had hardships, I don't recall any of it. That's why I'm saying truly, when Kyle died, I was like, what's going to happen, you know, because I don't remember any of that, you know. It just was, my parents were very good at, you know, I don't know, because, you know, we know everybody has hardships, right? So they didn't make it known to us kids. So so I think that's, you know, really, At first, I think I felt, oh gosh, I've got to hide this stuff from them. But then I saw the beauty in it.
Right.
That, that we can teach them how to be resilient and that you are going to have things that knock you down.
Yeah.
And you just have to do what you need to do in order to pick it back up. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're going to have obstacles in your life. Hopefully not so hard.
Yes, we can hope, right?
And, it's like the pain in, I'm sure you agree, the pain in your parents' eyes to see their own child suffering so much is, and as a parent, you can understand it now.
Well, and one thing that I will say, and I didn't know, because when I was on my journey, with Kyle's parents, I didn't know what they were feeling. I mean, we all know, and now as a parent, we know you're not supposed to bury your child. Like but at that time in my life, I couldn't deal with that. I just, and it wasn't until I had my first child that I was like, wow.
Right.
I get it now.
Yeah.
I get how they felt, in that moment. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine, how that is to have to do that as a parent, right? It's, just on a different level than as your spouse. Did you have trouble like balancing your self-care? I know that you went to therapy and you kind of did that. So you did deal with a lot of things, because I know a lot of people run from it. And was there anything else really that you did to kind of help you through that time, or even after you did get remarried? Were there things that you did?
Before I got married, I would say that in the first year, there was a lot of shopping.
Yeah.
A lot of spending money. There was, definitely retail therapy.
Yeah, me too.
And then I did travel a little bit, spent some time in different places with different people. My brother lived in LA at the time. So in the summer, I spent 2 weeks with him out there. I got a tattoo in honor of Andrew while I was there.
Okay.
At Kat Von D's studio. Do you know her?
No.
But I'm LA Inc.
Okay.
It was
so that's big time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow. It was a show back in the day. So that was like 2010, and she came out for a brief second. But Jason Mraz happened to be there.
Oh,
yes, it was so cool. He was being filmed for the show, and he and his crew were there getting tattoos, and it was so cool.
Oh yeah,
it was a really cool experience. So that was very healing for me. And then, although afterwards I kind of had a complete freak out because I thought it was too big, and my brother had to call my sister because he didn't know how to calm me down.
Oh no.
But then it was okay. It was okay. So, and while I was there, he had found, my brother is he's just into everything. He found a circus act that was like retired, and it was like a retired circus act, and they, in the valley, had set up their trampolines and their trapeze, and they would do lessons, and they would have people come pay to do the trapeze. So we did it.
Oh, wow.
And that was like one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life.
Well, and you spoke about how Andrew loved, adventure and stuff. So I bet the whole time you were thinking that he is like loving what you're doing, right?
Yes, totally.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
There was a video of it at one time. Who knows if it's still out there in the interwebs? But
oh wow.
Yeah, it was just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think, after that was a really great trip for me. Just in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So now, do do you do anything now to really, like, with this journey that you're still on? Because, I mean, clearly we're going to grieve forever, right? Do you do anything now, or?
So Andrew has a brother who is 4 years younger than him, and I've remained fairly close with him.
That's awesome.
And then his sister is the same age as me, but she's in Martinsville and lives with Andrew's mom. And so I have stayed in touch with them, and in the earlier years we would see each other, and I like made a trip down there and stayed with them one Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Stuff like that has been really great for me, to just be around his family. And his brother and his girlfriend actually were just at our house for dinner last weekend. So that was really awesome. We hadn't seen them for like a year, but we're just really close, and we're just connected forever. So
that's really awesome.
it makes it neat to be around. It's really neat to be around him, because he, looks similar to Andrew in some ways.
And you find that comforting. Like,
and I find it comforting.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother me at all. And it just makes me think. Sometimes it just brings back memories of us all being, being together, and Andrew ribbing Dan, and just silly stuff that makes me feel.
And I had the opposite. I think it just brought me so much pain. And I still do speak with his family, and they're still living where I'm from. And in the beginning, it was hard. It was really hard because I was like, I should be there. I should still be at all the functions, and and not that I couldn't be,
right,
because they would welcome me anytime with open arms. But I think for me, it was just really hard to do that. So I love that for you, and that you still have a relationship with them. That's really awesome.
I do feel thankful for that.
Yeah.
In remembrance of him. And he would say in certain moments, I just don't want to be forgotten. And how could you think that you would have forgotten? You'll never be forgotten.
Yeah.
Okay, so in continuing to talk just a little bit about the ways that, you said a lot of things about the way that you remember Andrew, and how throughout this journey, because you are now married again and have kids, had the therapy early on, but what are some things that you did throughout this journey to kind of help you along the way? Because as we both have been in many different seasons of life since we lost our spouses, right?
Right.
So what are some of those things that you can share?
Yeah, I think it is important to recognize that there are so many different stages, that the stages of grief, they do come and go. And it can be over a long period of time, many years. So that is just the reality of it. But also that, the seasons of life, I was just talking earlier about how after my daughter was born, it was such like a blissful time in my life. And I hadn't felt that in so long. But then I had another baby, and things were really hard.
Yes.
So that changed.
Yeah.
And then COVID happened a couple years later, So things are still hard, but you have a different perspective, and you reach out. I feel like I found ways to reach out and to look for resources to help me.
Right.
Because I knew that would keep me going. Social media outlets that I found motivating. One of them is called One Fit Widow. And she just, was super motivating and inspirational.
And she really is. I've met her, and I've been on some of her retreats, So, and I know that you and I share a bunch of quotes and things that she puts out on social media of that.
And then the second first is the other.
Yes, Christina Rasmussen.
Yeah. Did they do that together, the one you went to?
Yes,
right.
So they were together in Lake Tahoe on that retreat. Yeah.
I can't even imagine how amazing.
And I remember I did reach out to you,
tried to
and
get
you were
me.
not at
I
a
know.
point that you could even step away from your life.
I know.
But that was really amazing, and I will speak to that those are two platforms that for me were just, and it's nice that we just could sit back and just read and watch and take it all in and know that there were other people feeling the exact same thing that we were feeling because they've been through those seasons, right? So yes, those there are really good things to social media.
Yeah, sometimes you just needed to read it.
Yeah.
You just need to read the words because they're in you. It's how you feel. You may not be able to express it that way, but just reading it,
Yes.
knowing that somebody else feels it, is so powerful.
Yeah.
And yeah, those two have been so meaningful to me. And I have to say, without a doubt, meeting you and being connected with you by a dear friend, shout out to Jill Garcia.
Yes.
That it really changed, I think, the course of my journey. Like I feel like I look to you as kind of a mentor through my process because I didn't know. We just didn't know what to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I remember seeing your pictures on Facebook and saying to my mom, "Oh, Angie's getting married. How sweet is that?"
Yeah.
So you just gave me a lot of hope in a time that I didn't have any.
Yeah.
So
And that, thank you. And there have been some other people, and I was just actually talking to you about another woman that I met, and it takes a lot to confront it and to actually talk in person to people. And so watching from afar and doing it at your own pace, I think is powerful. And that's essentially what you did just with me, I think, because I had just come out of where you were when Andrew passed away. And so I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me that, because, and then I have another woman that I just talked to her through instant message. And she said, without you, I wouldn't have gotten through the first year. And it was just, she sent me a message just telling me your feelings. And I validated them, and I told her my stories. So I think that that's really powerful, that you have that ability to just watch and to listen and to learn and know that you're not alone. And it doesn't mean that you have to. I mean, it means that people are listening right now. And if they get one small anything from this, that could be what takes them through the next month, the next half a year.
And I think that word validation is really important because there were times where I remember thinking, like, I may not be where she is yet, but I see that it's okay. And I see that she can also still relate to how I feel in this moment. So there was a lot of validation in in how I was feeling and how I would feel one day, so that it was just that meeting you just has changed.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And that you are why I'm here doing this, because and did we mention at the beginking that this was we physically just met for the first time?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we did say that.
I think so.
And I tell you what, I cried because, and it's funny because I even said to Sarah that I feel like she's my best friend, even though we had never met, right?
It doesn't feel like this was the first time.
No,
Absolutely
and
not.
we could talk for hours and hours and hours. So it really, I am loving this, and so I want to wrap up, just because we've had a lot of, we have really gone into a lot of stuff. I feel pretty positive that I could have you back, and we could have a whole nother. I think maybe we should do the one about the sayings people tell us.
Oh yes, yes.
I think we should do that. But just in closing, with this episode, if you had any piece of advice, I know it's a really hard question, that you could give to anyone going through any sort of trauma, grief, loss, life-changing, anything. It doesn't have to just be the losing a spouse, but what, just through your journey, what's one thing that you would want to put out there?
I don't know if it would just be one.
Yeah,
thing.
it's hard. I know. Is there anything
know?
that stands out to you that was just monumental thus far in your life? That, like whether it be, you said the group therapy was really, really therapeutic for you, or, if it would be, a lot of people wait for that therapy time. They don't need to go if, you said that was really strong in your life, and maybe.
Yeah, I think leaning on people is important. Whoever your people are.
My last guest said the same thing. Lean into those people.
Yeah, because it is different for everyone, and therapy may not be right for everyone at the beginning.
Yeah.
But I do feel like you have to find the support, because you just can't get through it alone.
No.
You just can't.
And isn't it amazing how, and I'm pretty sure you thought you could at first. I know I did. I thought for sure you're gonna be a rock star. And no.
No, I never felt that.
Oh, you didn't? Oh gosh, I thought for sure that I was just, I think I just, there's no other way, And so I was against therapy, right? And so I didn't really want to do it. It was more my family pushing me to do that. Thank goodness they did. But I didn't want to lean on people. Yeah. And so that was different.
I think that is a normal, fairly normal response, and especially women who have children. Mm-hmm. It's harder sometimes for them to lean in, or to not feel like they just have to continue taking care. Mm-hmm. Whereas for me, it was sort of like, what do I do now? Because I'm not taking care of anyone. Yeah. And so it was different. Yeah. And I just, sort of proper. Yeah. But yeah, I think that surrounding yourself with the people that make you feel safe, who can let you cry, ask too many questions.
Yes. I agree with that. Yeah, because you have to find your certain people, and I know, and there were tons of people that wanted to be there for me, and I was just because I'm writing a book, and I think I described it in this chapter. Everything was so chaotic in that time. In my world, just it was so chaotic, but I felt so isolated, and I wanted to quiet everything. But that's where I felt the most alone. Right. I wanted that to be with myself and my thoughts, because the outside was so loud. But that's where I felt the weakest. Right. Yeah. It's hard to describe. But yes, definitely leaning into those people and using them for what they can offer you and what they can do for you. I think that's a great piece of advice. Okay, so in closing, I just want to ask you one last question, and I know it's going to be a really hard one, but if you had any advice to give
to our listeners, anyone going through any type of trauma, grief, loss, what is one little piece that you think is most valuable?
That is a hard question because one thing is
because you had so many.
Yeah, I had so many.
Yeah.
But I do think that leaning into your people is would probably be my number one advice because I feel like you just can't do it alone. You need whomever it may be. You need them to help support you and just kind of hold you up because it's a really difficult period of your life to be by yourself. And I think that is one of the best things you can do for yourself when you've experienced a loss or when you are with someone who has a terminal illness. Sometimes it was hard for me to accept that and allow people to come in and be a part.
I can imagine.
But it really is the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
So I would say yes. And the other thing I think is just working through things on your own timeline and really there's no rule book and there's no timeline. You just do things when you feel like you can do them.
And the navigation is it can be frustrating, it can be hard, it can be powerful, it can be all of those things, and you have setbacks and you have triggers, and so I think that is key. I think to knowing that you set that pace for yourself, and you know, and when you spoke to like leaning into people, and you will find those that you can lean into 100%, and there will be some that don't come along with you, and then there will be ones that do come into your path, and so I do think that's really great advice to just lean into anything that gives you peace, hope, joy,
strength.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being here with us. I am blown away with your story and this friendship that you and I have created. And I can't wait to have you back on. We're going to have to come back on and have another episode. But anyways, thank you so much for being here with us.
I really appreciate it.
Yes.
I've enjoyed this so much, and I look forward to all of the amazing work you're going to do.
Thank you.
With this podcast.
Thank you. All right, thank you guys so much for being here and listening to this episode of Resilience Reborn. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us on the Resilience Reborn podcast. We hope today's stories provided you hope and inspiration to always be resilient.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to our channel. You can also interact with us on our Facebook community page, which you can find by searching Resilience Reborn on Facebook.
Remember, through resilience and recovery, you are never alone. Together,
we grow stronger. See you next time.